Brothers and sisters, today we heard two gospel readings, and I'm going to put them together, which is technically speaking not very difficult to do because they're not just from the same gospel by Matthew, but they're only separated by one line. And I'm not sure if that's a unique situation where two separate gospel readings are that close, but it's special. So the first reading, it was read in Slavonic language. So let me summarize it quickly. In that short gospel reading by Matthew, we see how Jesus walks by the lake and then recruits 4 of his disciples, and the way he does that is very efficient and effective. He just sees them and makes a decision that those are people I want to recruit, and he tells them, follow me, and they follow him, no questions asked. And that's a situation, it's a story that I'm sure would make any HR department envious, because that's a very good way to recruit people, not just fast and efficient, but also they don't ask anything in return, no questions asked. And we might think, okay, so what tricks can we learn so that we can influence people and make friends? But that's not how we should be thinking about that gospel reading. And the way we should be thinking is, okay, so what's going on here? It's God encountering people, and people are encountering God. So it's a very different level that we need to put ourselves at. It's God and people, so that relationship. And if we pay attention, then there are 2 key words, I think, in this short gospel reading that are actually repeating twice. One is saw, God saw those fishers, and then told him to follow, and then they immediately started following him. So saw and immediately, I think those are key words. So what's so special about the word saw? God saw those fishers. And okay, so that's not how we see people when we look around. It's God seeing people as entire human beings. So just understanding who they are, what they're capable of, just knowing their thoughts, heart, and mind. That's what it means that Jesus, God, saw people. Okay, so that's really important. And then, of course, God knows things. God knows everything, and God knows us, right? It's not just about knowing, but it's also he saw and he made the decision right away to call those fishers, Peter and Andrew, and then Jacob and John. So he knew their hearts, but most importantly, because God created man out of love. And then that's we see how that love is being shared. So he saw people, and that was an opportunity which God used well to start sharing love. And that's why those fishers, simple people, they responded right away immediately. So that's another key word, immediately. They responded immediately because they felt that love, and that's all they needed, and they needed more of that. So that's why they didn't ask any other questions. And probably we can stop, I can stop this sermon here, because that's a lesson for us right away that if God is addressing us, He sees us all the time and says something to do, especially, then we follow immediately. So we can stop here, but then there are other gospel readings which, if you read, then you might start asking questions. And then when those questions arise, and I might address them in a second, then it becomes complicated. More complicated than what is required to us in terms of acting immediately. So we start reflecting, and there is a danger that we overthink. So because if you think and think, then you don't act immediately. But still, we need to think about this story of Jesus calling four fishers, Peter, Andrew, Jacob, and John, in mystical terms, and that's almost like, they are meeting God, and that's something that we hear very often, that how people find orthodoxy. They come to the church, they feel something, the presence of God, and then they want to meet God, and that happens in various ways for different people. So that mystical component of people meeting God. But from this story we see, of course, how does that happen? Well, of course, God needs to look at us and see us, and then, of course, that love is already shared with us. But there is this mystical something going on, and it's a good kind of mysticism that you should not be afraid of. And so the question is so what's going on? What made them, those fishers, uneducated fishers, follow Jesus right away? And that's something that we probably can find if we sort of go to the next reading, which is it's Jesus talking to the crowd of people on the mountain. That's his famous Beatitudes, which are like ethical imperatives for the Christian, something that we should do. And those ethical imperatives are not very prescriptive, not very specific. They are more like descriptives. Okay, so let's think about Beatitudes and the story of Jesus calling his disciples. We don't hear often, but that second gospel we hear every time, more or less, when we come and attend the liturgy. You've heard it twice today, actually, in the gospel reading and as when the choir was singing antiphons, right? So before the small entrance. Okay, so and there are quite a few of those ethical imperatives. So which one would apply to the first reading, to the first story, the situation? I think one particular beatitude verse would give us a clue about what's going on. And which one is that? What do you think? So there are quite a few, and Jesus sees these fishers, and he selects them. Why? Because they're merciful, or because they're peacekeepers, because they're mourning, maybe? Not exactly. I'm not sure about that. But there is one particular verse. Blessed are those who are pure in heart, they will see God. So he said the second part, they will see God. I think that those fishers, Peter, Andrew, Jacob, and John, they did see God. And why? Because they had purity in their heart. They saw God, Jesus, with their hearts first. It's probably they didn't understand completely. The way Nathaniel did not understand who Jesus was. He said, well, you're a prophet because you saw me, under that fig tree. But they had that purity and heart, and I think it's key for us to understand what needs to happen when we are meeting God. So it's something about the quality of our hearts, and it should be pure. So the way Peter, Andrew, Jacob, and John reacted immediately was because they were driven by their heart, and there was purity in their heart, and that's key to immediacy. But then, how do you balance minds and hearts? So you don't start with the mind, because if you start with the mind, they probably would have asked questions. Okay, what is that for us if we follow you? Okay, so why do we need to follow? And it's the same as my son would ask questions about, why is that rule? Can you explain me? So it's just do it, right? And he keeps asking. So that's inappropriate use of mind. That's actually useless way of mind. So it's this balance in heart and mind. With heart, what do we do with heart? Well, we purify heart, and there are various ways in which we can do it. And of course, we're celebrating the All Saints of Russia today, and we have examples how to purify heart. And most of the things we do in the church, praying, confessing, many other things, they address our heart. That's how we purify our hearts. But also minds. We need to keep our minds in place. And that's something that you see even in this gospel, in two gospel readings, that people were following Jesus. Why? Not because he told them to follow, but because he was healing them, and they were impressed. But and maybe something was happening in their hearts, but their minds were not calibrated correctly. So Jesus started to calibrate their minds and disciples' minds as well by giving them those ethical imperatives, beatitudes. And if you think about beatitudes, since that's our second reading, those were pretty shocking. And if you take that for granted, you shouldn't, because if you read any line that just, and if you don't question, there is something wrong with your mind. So you have to use your mind to ask those questions, and of course there are some answers to that. But that's really important to purify your heart and then calibrate your mind. And church is helping us to do that, and we have many examples, and from various gospels you see that heart goes first and then mind goes second, and especially when we're talking about meeting God. So just taking you back a little bit to the resurrection stories. So we have Mary Magdalene, and she sees a gardener, but that's resurrected Jesus, and then she recognizes him once he starts talking to her. So it's not just seeing it, it's something else. It's just relying on heart. So her heart was there with Jesus. That's why she recognized. And then Luke and Cleopa, when they were traveling with Jesus, and they couldn't recognize them, they were spent so much time and they didn't know it was Jesus. But they said, well, didn't our hearts burn in us? So that's again heart. So heart goes first, and then mind goes second. And of course, I want to repeat that we do have examples as saints of Russia who we celebrate today. They did rely on their hearts, and of course they did other things as well to purify their hearts and calibrate their minds. And we can emulate them. And emulate, what does it mean? So it's just to refer to our, issue of balance in hearts and minds. Well, emulate the saints, meaning that, like them, like disciples who first met Christ, when he called them, we need to rely on our hearts first. And then we have to act on what Jesus tells us to do. Because to the disciples he said, follow me, and they did. But we also have so many other specific instructions of what we can do. So, so brothers and sisters, let's emulate our saints by relying on our hearts and following church and God's commandments, even though we often don't understand why we should do it. And that's how we should proper balance our hearts and minds.